This is another history of the relationship between Japan and Korea. What is the relationship between your country and its neighbor? How well do you get along? Most of the time, neighboring countries have an important relationship but do not get along very well. Such is the case with Japan and Korea. In the previous article, I explained about Hideyoshi's first Japanese invasions of Korea. In this article, I will discuss the second Japanese invasions of Korea that took place in 1597. In 1593, the war with Joseon and Ming Dynasty that had begun the previous year was at peace. Both Ming and Japan made peace with each other after receiving false reports that both countries had surrendered. However, such lies were soon discovered, and in 1597, Hideyoshi once again raised an army to conquer the Ming Dynasty. The Japanese expeditionary force was 140,000 strong. The purpose of this army was not only to conquer the Ming Dynasty, but also to build castles and permanently place soldiers in Joseon in order to make Joseon a Japanese territory. In August 1597, the Japanese forces completely seized the sea route between Joseon and Japan by destroying the Joseon naval leaders and the Joseon naval forces at the Chilchonryong battle. The Japanese forces easily defeated the Ming and Joseon forces defending the southern part of Joseon, and by the end of August, as far as Jeonju was under the control of the Japanese forces. After bringing Jeolla-do and Cheongseong-do under his control as per Hideyoshi's operational goals, he built Japanese-style castles in major cities in an attempt to establish a permanent ruling system. The 60,000 Ming and Joseon troops besieged Ulsan Castle in response to the Japanese army's haste to build a castle. The 10,000 Japanese troops, led by Kiyomasa Kato, who were not prepared for a siege, struggled and inflicted heavy losses on the Ming forces, but they did not have enough food reserves and were on the verge of falling. A force of 13,000 men led by Hidimoto Mori rushed to the rescue and won a great victory, inflicting 20,000 casualties on the Ming army. The Japanese army steadily built castles and tried to secure control over the southern part of Joseon. The plan was to dispatch even larger reinforcements in 1599, but in August 1598, Hideyoshi Toyotomi died. Hideyoshi entrusted the leadership of the government to Toshiai Maeda and Ieyasu Tokugawa as guardians of his heir, the young Hideyori. After Hideyoshi's death, the five great elders, including Toshiai and Ieyasu, decided to withdraw their troops from Joseon. Hideyoshi's death was kept secret even from the Japanese troops in Joseon. The Ming forces, which suffered a heavy defeat at Ulsan, received reinforcements from Ming Dynasty and became a large force of 100,000. They attacked the castles of Ulsan, Sachun, and Suncheon at the same time to destroy the Japanese forces. Ulsan Castle was defended by Kiyomasa Kato as in the previous battle. This time, he was fully prepared for a siege and kept the Ming forces at bay. The Ming troops suffered heavy losses and retreated. Sachun Castle was defended by 7,000 troops led by Yoshihiro Shimazu. Then, 30,000 Ming troops attacked the castle. The Ming forces piled up corpses, and when an explosion occurred in the powder magazine of the Ming forces, Shimazu stormed out of the castle and attacked the Ming forces in the opposite direction. The Ming army, with 4 times as many men, suffered near total loss and retreated. Suncheon was defended by Yukinaga Konishi with 13,000 men. Here, Ming and Joseon forces of 55,000 attacked. In this battle, too, the Ming forces suffered heavy losses both on land and water, and were defeated. Thus, the Ming forces numbering over 100,000 suffered a crushing defeat against the outnumbered Japanese forces. The people of Joseon and Hansong were so crushed by this crushing defeat that they began to prepare to flee, and in October 1598, Ieyasu and the 5 great elders ordered the Japanese forces in Joseon to retreat. Hideyoshi's death was concealed in the order. After Hideyoshi's death, conflicts over power among the feudal lords surfaced in Japan, and foreign wars were not an option. After receiving the order to return to Japan, Yukinaga Konishi promised the Ming shogun a bloodless retreat and began preparations for withdrawal. However, the Ming and Joseon side grasped the news of Hideyoshi's death, and they reversed the promise of bloodless retreat, blockaded Kanazi's forces at sea, and surrounded them. Hearing this news, Yoshihiro Shimazu and others who withdrew from Sachun Castle went to the rescue of Kanazi and confronted the Joseon naval force at the Noryong Strait. In this battle, the Shimazu forces struggled but won, and Yi Sun-sin, the hero of Joseon in this war, and many generals were killed in the battle. The Ming and Joseon forces, depleted of naval forces in this battle, could not catch up with the retreating Japanese forces, and all the Japanese forces retreated by the end of November 1598. After Hideyoshi's death, it was Ieyasu Tokugawa who took charge of the Joseon problem. There were rumors in Japan that Ieyasu would redispatch feudal lords who opposed him to Joseon. Ieyasu sought to restore diplomatic relations with Joseon, and in 1604, Joseon sent an envoy to Japan to explore Japan's internal affairs and to meet with Ieyasu. The envoy confirmed the transition of power in Japan from the Toyotomi family to the Tokugawa family and reported Ieyasu's desire to have diplomatic relations with Joseon to the Joseon imperial court. Let us look at the influence of Ming and Joseon in this war. The Ming Dynasty suffered enormous casualties and financial burdens in this war with Japan. This war and the Ming Emperor's extravagance ate away at the Ming Dynasty's national power and contributed to the invasion of the Jurchen in the first half of the 17th century. At that time, Joseon was extremely centralized, and class discrimination and severe exploitation were so severe that the peasants always starved in the spring every year. The people's lives were based on self-sufficiency due to the underdeveloped distribution economy, and they had to barter with the Joseon people to procure food, as transactions using silver and other currencies were not established. When war broke out, the Joseon, Ming, and Japanese armies procured food locally. Due to food shortages and deteriorating security, farmers abandoned cultivation and became exiles. The Ming troops' food supply was provided by the Joseon side, so the Joseon government had to conduct harsh food procurement. As a result, along with the looting of Ming troops, areas not invaded by Japanese forces were also devastated and the population drastically reduced. In addition, the Ming forces were given priority in supplying food to the Ming forces over the Joseon forces, and this had no small effect on the Joseon forces' will to fight. The Ming forces stationed in Joseon also conducted uncontrolled looting of the Joseon people, and while the Joseon people regarded Japan as the most aggressor, they revolted against the oppressive Joseon dynasty and hated the Ming forces as the second aggressor. During the Warring States period, samurai used the heads of their fallen comrades as proof of their war effort. In the Japanese invasions of Korea, the number of heads was not sufficient for transportation, and the number of noses was used to measure the war's success. Therefore, samurai shaved off the noses of non-combatants, young and old, male and female, in order to increase the number of their own achievements. The shaved noses were received by the military attachés from the lords, pickled in salt, and sent to Japan, where they were later mourned at ear mouths. After the war, hostility toward Japan emerged in Joseon. And the Zhong clan of Tsushima, which wished for peaceful trade relations, was strongly guarded by the Joseon dynasty, with Japanese envoys forbidden to come to Tokyo and Japanese trade visitors restricted to the Wakan established in Busan. On the other hand, among the Joseon nobility, the awareness that Joseon had escaped destruction thanks to Ming reinforcements was emphasized. And the idea that Joseon owed a debt of gratitude to the Ming dynasty prevailed, strengthening Joseon's position as a vassal state. This had a great impact on the course of Joseon's diplomacy with China. It also had a great cultural influence on the Korean peninsula. Chili peppers were brought to the Korean peninsula by Japanese troops during the Japanese invasion of Korea and laid the foundation for Korean and Korean cuisine such as kimchi. On the military front, many firearms manufacturing and operating techniques were introduced from the Japanese, and swords were made from the Japanese sword as well as other derivative armaments. Even today, many ruins of fortresses remain throughout the Korean peninsula, leaving traces of Japanese rule. The Japanese invasion of Korea is regarded as the starting point of anti-Japanese sentiment in the Korean peninsula today. In the next article, we will discuss the diplomatic relations between Japan and Korea during the Edo period. If you enjoyed this article, please subscribe to our channel and click the like button.